Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today I'm going to show you how to take a jelly roll and make some quilt-as-you-go placemats. I'm going to be using a collection of fabrics that are called Evelyn, and these are from Wyndham Fabrics, and they're really beautiful with large and small roses. So I'm going to take out my strips, and then I'm going to iron them up a little bit because when you get them out of the package, they may be a little wrinkled where they were folded, or if your jelly roll was rolled, they're probably even a little bit more wrinkled. So I'm just going to briefly iron some so we don't have to worry about creases. I'm going to use 15 or 16 different strips to make 2 placemats. So from my whole jelly roll, I'm probably going to have enough to make 4 placemats with leftovers to make a matching table runner. The only other item we need for the placemat is a backing, which I cut 15 by 20 inches, and then a piece of batting, which is a little bit bigger. Now my strips, they all need to be a little bit longer than 15 inches. So I've got a little bit extra from each strip. So I'm just going to eyeball it up, and I'm just going to cut off the bottoms of all of these guys. So I've now got 2 strips here, and they're about the right size that I need. I'm going to save all of these cut off ends, and we will use these at the very end when we make the table runner to match the placemats. The first step is to stitch all the way around the edge, very close to the edge. This is just to keep everything together. So I'm about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Now we're going to flip this over, and we are going to sew our strips on here. And the strips do not have to be all straight. We're going to overlap them a little bit. So this is going to end up being a little bit thicker than a quilt would be, but that's okay because it's going to be sitting on a table, and it's nice if it's kind of stiff. So your first strip, I'm going to put it on straight, and I'm going to make sure I cover up that stitching there. So I've got it a little bit over. Now I'm going to pick another strip that's a different color, and I'm going to put it right sides on here, and I'm going to make it a little bit crooked, and I'm going to just sew 1/4 inch in from this top piece. So I'm going to roll this down so it's out of the way, and I just need to make sure that I am starting all of my stitching, all of my strips beyond this line here. So we are quilting as we go. So we are going to have the stitching that we're doing right now go all the way through to the back. I'll show you when I get down there. And then we won't have to quilt this when we're done. It's going to be already quilted. So I'm going to stitch all the way off the edge. And then I am going to finger press this open. And I'm not even going to trim off this excess. The only reason you might want to trim it off if you thought it was going to show through, but my top fabric is thick enough and I'm not really seeing any shadowing of green back there. So that's what it's going to look like on the back. It's already going to be quilted. Now we're going to take another strip, and I'm going to take a different color. And again, I'm going to lay it on there just a little bit crooked. So I'm going to be going in like this a little bit, and I'm not even going to go all the way to the edge. I'm going to move it back in a little bit. Again, I'm going to stitch 1/4 inch in from this piece. And every time I'm going to finger press this open. To give the placemat a little more interest, I like to take some of the strips and cut them in half. It doesn't even need to be entirely straight, because the outside edges are perfectly straight. So I'm just going to use scissors right here. You can, of course, pre-cut this with your blade at the table. So this is the really straight edge, so that's the one I'm going to put down on here. And again, I'm going to make it just a little bit crooked on here and sew along the edge. Now you're starting to see the pattern making a little bit of a fan shape there. Now the next piece we put on, I'm going to do crooked a little bit the other way. So I'm going to put it on like this and stitch along there. I'm going to continue adding pieces on, and I'm going to make some crooked. So I'm going to make some crooked this way and some crooked this way, and I'm going to use some half pieces and keep going till I've covered up all of the placemat. I'm almost to the end here. I'm just going to sew one more strip on, and then we will take this over to the cutting table and trim off all the excess so it's exactly rectangular. Before we trim it, we do want to steam press it nice and flat. Because we were finger pressing, it's already pretty flat. And I'll show you what it looks like from the back. So now you can see all of our quilting lines. My thread is matching pretty well, but I think you can see it. So all of the patchwork on the top is extending beyond the back, and that's okay. We are now going to trim the whole thing down to 13.5 by 18.5. So it's quite a bit bigger than that now, because you know sometimes it'll distort along the edges when you're sewing all those rows. I've put the placemat top on my cutting board, and I'm just eyeing up the bottom here so it's pretty much parallel to my lines that are on the board. So I'm going to trim this side first, and I'm putting the ruler on a line on the board. And now I'm going to measure over from that cut 18.5 inches. Now I'm going to make a cut along the bottom. Thought I didn't catch that all the way. There we go. And then I'm going to measure up 13.5. And trim this off. Now, that's what I want it to look like. It's abstract, it's a little wavy, and all we have to do is put some binding on it, and it's done. Now we're going to put binding on these placemats using the exact same method that we would use if we were making a quilt. I like to cut my binding 2.5 inches, iron it in half, and then I'm going to stitch using slightly bigger than 1/4 inch seam allowance here. Now I'm going to stitch to about 1/4 inch, a little bigger than 1/4 inch from this edge here, and then I'm going to back tack. Now I'm going to take this off of the machine, turn this, fold that so we've got a 45-degree angle right here and it's pointing right to the corner. Fold it down. Now I'm going to feel where the fold is, and I'm going to kind of draw an imaginary line from that stitching over here and that, and I'm going to start stitching right there. Now we do have another video that will show you in detail how to put the binding on, but I like to sew it from the front, and then when I'm all done, I'm going to open this up, I'm going to turn it to the back, and you can whip stitch that by hand, but I like to stitch right in the ditch here on the machine, and that will catch the binding on the back side. Here's the finished placemats. Really fast and really fun. So I got 4 placemats, and they're all made with the same method, all a little bit lean, looks really good. Use the coordinating print on the back side, so you could flip them all over and use them from this side if you like. Now from one whole jelly roll, there's a lot more strips, so I went ahead and made a matching table runner. Now you'll notice the table runner has a little bit more of the tan. I hadn't used that color in the placemats, but I like having a little secondary color in the runner. And this is where I used those smaller pieces. So some of these are pieced, and I think that gives it just a little more interest. Really fun to make, really fast, and this all came from 1 jelly roll plus 2 yards of fabric to use on the back side, and I used about 1 yard for the binding on all of them. Thanks for watching our tutorial today on Quilt As You Go, placemats, and a table runner, all from a jelly roll. Happy quilting!